please make sure you go over to YouTube, subscribe, or you can always find us on any of the podcast platforms, and that's Fostering Change. Well, it's so hard to believe that we are almost halfway through this year. It is crazy.
Insane.
Every single time I do an episode, I think to myself, is it going to be, am I going to do another one? Am I going to do another season? We're ending matter of fact, we are actually ending our fifth season. I am still thinking about our sixth season, but I will have to tell you, when I meet the most amazing guests, it actually makes me want to continue. Our next guest, let me tell you something. She's a first for me. She's the first person I've ever met who has done what she's done, and I can't wait for us to talk about it. But I'm just going to go and jump right in this. Kate, welcome to Fostering Change.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So, Kate, I'm going to tell you, your story just blew my mind. I follow you on social media. So, as we all know, we had the pandemic, COVID was crazy. And
Yeah.
as we're in COVID, you decide to become a foster parent.
Yeah.
So can you
Yeah.
tell, because I've got it, I barely could figure out how to, get up, because the world was going so crazy, but you actually became a foster parent during COVID. Explain that to me.
Yeah. So it was honestly the first time that I was ever forced to be at home and not be on the move. And I think for my personality type, I love being on the move. I love being on the go, and sitting still is actually pretty hard for me. And, coming out of the music industry, all of the shows got canceled. Everybody was stuck at home. And I'd kind of done all of the home organizing I could have done. I'd like read all the sourdough recipes. I'd like seen all the fun cocktails you could make at home. I'd like done all the video Zooms with everyone, and I was just bored. And I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and a friend of mine had reshared somebody else's post, and it was a post and two little kids had hearts over their faces. And I literally just got curious. I was bored enough that I was like, oh, okay, why are there hearts over their faces? Like, I'm curious. And ended up clicking through, and it was in May. So it was May 2020, which is Foster Care Awareness Month. So this friend of a friend was talking all about their foster care journey, posting every day. And so I want to say it was like the ninth day or something. It was early on, but there were a few posts that I could go back and read. And I was just like, oh, wow, I know all about adoption. I have two younger adopted brothers, but I know nothing about foster care. I was like, interesting. So I literally put my phone down, grabbed my laptop, and just typed in foster care in Nashville. The DCS website popped up, the Department of Children's Services. I clicked, and I had no idea. I'm single and I live in an apartment. So I was like, can single people foster? Is my house like, do you have to own a house? I lived in a very small, like 726 square feet apartment. I was like, is that even big enough? Like, I don't know any of these answers, but I just signed up for the informational meeting. There's one coming up at the end of the month. It was like 2 weeks away. And I just kind of was like, okay, we'll see. And so that's how it kind of all
That
started.
is
It was from an
crazy.
Instagram post. Yeah.
That is so, let me tell you something. I say this quite often. Social media used the proper way is the best tool ever. And it truly can educate us in so many different ways. As a dad who has adopted 5 children out of foster care, it's not an easy thing to do, to go through all the classes and everything that's required. So you go to this, and this first class that you went to, which, by the way, when my husband and we did our first class, it was 15 years ago, and they didn't even have a first class. I mean, it was like
Sure.
you were in it. And
Yeah.
so you go to this first class, and you find out the information about, a child could come into your home, and the main goal is reunification.
Mm-hmm.
And was that, and knowing that you knew a little bit about it, was there any hesitation there, knowing that, wow, here this child's going to come into my life. My heart's going to get a little open, maybe even
Mm-hmm.
bigger. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, the child could be reunified back with their birth parents.
Yeah. I think I was really naive to that whole, honestly, to the whole scenario. I heard these words, reunification and a child being with you for a period of time. And I do think I approached it in a pretty naive way. I also, what was the catalyst for me during COVID specifically was I kept hearing these stories of kids being locked at home and not being safe. And I think that for me was really what like amped me up, because I'm like, wow, I'm at home and I'm safe, I'm well fed, I have everything that I need and more. And there's some kids who, I kept hearing the narrative of like, man, there are kids that only get a warm meal at school and now they can't go to school and they're not safe. And so in my mind, it seemed short term. Like if I could just have a kid with me for a little while to get through, their parents could get back on their feet, then, that was kind of my mindset.
Right.
I didn't, I mean, which is kind of classic me. Like my fiance would be like, yeah, that's not shocking that you didn't think fully through it before you did it. Because I'm just like such a like, okay, let's just do it. I didn't really think of until we got into the classes of, oh wow, like sometimes reunification doesn't work, or sometimes it does. Like you just don't know. You don't know
No,
what age child you're going to get. You don't know when the call is going to come. There are just so many unknowns. And I do like, I'm a little bit of a control, I'm a recovering control freak. And so this
I
felt
love your
very hard.
recovery.
So this is a really hard, space to enter into, because the further I got into it, the more I realized like, oh, you don't control anything in foster care. I mean, I think in life in general, we don't control a lot,
You're right.
but I think
Foster care
foster
is
care,
worse though. You have
totally.
literally no control whatsoever. And
Yeah.
the fact that, going into it like you went into it, Reese and I went into it the same exact way, by the way. And I grew up in the system and
Yeah.
aged out of the system. So, I had the background of the system and
Yeah.
then to, I remember my husband saying to me, because when at first I was like, I don't know about this. I was like, this whole reunification, I don't like my heart to be broken. And my husband
Totally.
was like very much like you, where he was like, if we could just, change a child's life for just one day, why their parents, don't you think we've made, a difference in a child's life? So very much like you, how you did that.
Yeah.
One of the things and again, by the way, I know all of you who are viewing, everybody's listening, you always send me the hate emails. I get it. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. The thing that I feel that the mistake that I feel they did 15 years ago, and I'm still hearing about it. I just interviewed a friend of mine who, he just recently wrote a book. Him and his husband also just adopted. And I just felt like there was not enough support when it came to being
Mm,
a foster parent.
totally.
And especially, dealing with the trauma that the kids are dealing with. And, there's so many like inner secrets that you don't know about. I remember when
Yeah.
we sat in the courtroom, adopting our children, and it took us a couple of years. And, hearing the case for the first time of the abuse that
Mm,
my kids went through, it
yeah.
was, I mean, I remember sitting there crying in the courtroom and the judge having to stop. Were
Yeah.
you able to have any information we're going to fast forward everybody. So
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, so not only you should become a foster parent, okay? So you have this baby, this beautiful baby girl come into your
Mhm.
life, okay? So, how long was she with you until you were like, you know what, reunification just doesn't seem to be what the goal is going to be, and the judge changed it to adoption?
So I think adoption was added probably around 5 or 6 months, because
That's so
yeah,
soon.
it was really soon. In the state of Tennessee, if a birth parent doesn't see a child for 4 months, it constitutes as abandonment and neglect. And so there had been that period of time that had elapsed. We did visits with birth mom at the beginning. And even at that point, again, I was so new, so green to the whole process. And so I was looking at, my daughter's birth mom and just being like, oh, this is going to be a win for you. Like, you're going to do it. You're going to get your feet back on the ground. You're going to like, because I thought I just couldn't imagine any other scenario, because of like, this is your child, like,
Yeah.
and so I remember saying to the caseworker, like, oh, I think birth moms, like, I think she's gonna do it. They set out all the goals, all the reunification goals, and I was like, I think she's gonna do it. And I remember the caseworker saying to me, she goes, yeah, we'll see if she's even talking to us in a few months. And for me, that might as well have sounded like the craziest thing. I'm like, of course she's going to be talking to us. And sure enough,
This is her
like,
daughter,
exactly. Again, I was just like, huh? No, like, of course. And sure enough, like, we did visits. I think, yeah, we did a few visits at the beginning, and then we just kind of lost touch. And So it was added pretty early on. There was a point in the case when Gigi was 9 months old that things, birth mom came back into the picture, and it for a minute seemed like, oh man, okay, we're going to start all over again. Because, if she indicated at all that she wanted to try to work her plan, then we would have needed to support that. And that, at that point, that was the most scared I think I was in the whole process. Because here we were 9 months in, and I actually remember I had a therapy appointment and my nanny didn't show up. And I was like, oh, well, I'm bringing Gigi because like I need to go to therapy. And,
Therapy.
and I'm like, she can just come with me. And it was actually super healing because my therapist was able to witness the bond between Gigi
Right.
and I. And I just said, I'm so scared. Like, what if she leaves? Like, I'm so, so scared. And she said, Kate, I can tell you two things. One is that before God made the world, the universe, everything, he knew you were supposed to be her mom for right now, no matter what, like for right now. And
That's
then she said, watching you two together, you guys have a secure attachment. That's something that birth mom probably didn't have with her mom. And so you've changed the cycle for her. And because of that secure attachment that you have with Gigi, no matter where she goes in the future, no matter who else she ends up with, she's going to have that as the foundation, and that will serve her for the rest of her life. And I just was like bawling, being like, okay, it's worth it. Because if she leaves tomorrow, I know that hopefully I have handed her and like prepared her for being able to have successful relationships in the future. And that was super helpful for me to kind of navigate the really unknown in that like 9 months, 8, 9 months. It was, I just remember every night putting her to bed being like, is this the last time I'm gonna be doing
Yeah.
this? Is this
No,
the
I
last
know.
time?
Let me tell you, I lived that like you did. As we put and like I said, we got 4 kids within 3 months. And
Mm,
I just remember, and our youngest was 6 months when he arrived. They were 6 months, 2, 2, and 4. And I just remember, because very much like what you went through, all of a sudden we'd have visits, and then 5 months would go by, and it was crickets. And
yeah,
then all of a sudden they'd come back in the picture and they'd be like, okay, we're going to start this. And it was just like this
yeah,
constant. And so after about 2 years, it was just, and the thing that gets me, Kate, is like so many we're all different. Like states,
sure.
like there's not, missing 4 months of visits in the state of Maryland and the District of Columbia isn't anything. You
Mm,
could miss a year and all of a sudden come back and they're like, okay, we're going to do reunification now.
oh
And
gosh.
and again, I just don't think that reunification is always the answer. I truly don't
Hmm.
think it's always the answer. So you go, you got Gigi, you file, you adopt her, but lo and behold, you didn't stop there.
Well, I thought it was stopping. In all fairness, I thought it was stopping. I mean, I kept my home. So the adoption was in September of 2021, and I kept my home open for a year after that, um, because I still had such a heart for fostering, and I knew that I was now aware of how great the need was by the number of calls that I would get, or in text daily from people trying to place kids who were coming into custody. And there were a
Wasn't that
few.
hard? Wasn't that so hard to say no?
Oh,
That's how I ended up with 4 kids. My husband, I ended up with 4 kids in the beginning because it was like once you say yes, it's like you're on auto dial.
yeah. Oh, totally. And I mean, I feel like each of the call from the call from the call center, like everybody knows. Like I knew if they really wanted me to take someone, like the certain person would call, and I feel like he would try to like work me, because it was really, really hard to say no. I mean, they don't prepare you for
No.
that either. They don't prepare you for how terrible you will feel as a human for saying no.
Yeah.
And yet you have to, a lot of the calls that I was getting after I adopted Gigi were for like 16, 17-year-old males with sexual assault towards minors. And I'm like,
And,
I
and, and
just,
do, isn't that just okay? So that just blows my mind because the same
yeah.
thing happens with us. And it's just like, wait a minute, I have a little girl in my home, okay?
Hmm.
And you're calling us to say there is a 14-year-old who, by the way, has been in and out of the system, but just came out of a detention center because they sexually molested another girl that was in a foster
Right.
home. Why would
Yeah.
you call me?
I know. And I was like, I have a 2-bedroom apartment. So I'm like, it's against the rules technically to have a kid sleeping on a couch, but I'm like, where would you like this 17-year-old
Right.
man to be sleeping? Like so I said no a lot, a lot, a lot. Or it would be like, hey, we have a sibling set of 4 coming into custody. Could you take them? And I'm like,
I have a
no,
two
I'm
bedroom and
sorry. Again, like, and so I would say things like, hey, if it was an emergency placement, like I can help for 24 hours, or if it was a Friday and kids were coming into custody, like let me know if you need help for the weekend, but I ended up not even having any of those because they would find permanent placements. But there were a couple, like even infants that came into the system, and it was just like one of those things where like somebody else would get the call first and take them. And so I was kind of like, well, like I'm staying open, but there's no kid that I could have said yes to that would have fit in like our family. Like I was like, I could take another toddler, and put
right,
them in
right,
Gigi's room, but I can't have a 14-year-old or 16-year-old.
right.
And I never got those calls. And so in September of 2022, a year later, in the state of Tennessee, you have a certain amount of time to like take another placement, or else you kind of get like put on their naughty list, which I think is ridiculous. I have like major issue with that and let them know that I was like, you'd rather have me close my home because I'm not taking anyone, but like you guys also haven't given me any kids that I could say yes to
Right.
in a safe way, but you would rather close my home, which like there's no maintenance required to keep me open. Like
Exactly.
anyway, it is what it is. They're hopefully working on changing those rules, but it was basically like you can either get your home closed for you in bad standing, which is like you can't ever be a foster parent in the state of Tennessee again, or you can willingly say like I'm going to close my home. So I was like, I'm going to close my home. And I'd also been feeling this tug of like, I was 37 when I became a foster parent single. It was a year later, 2 years later, I was 39. I was about to turn 40. I was just like, I really want to have time to date and to, like I'd always envisioned having a husband, having a dad, and now a dad for Gigi. And so I was just like, maybe I need to say no to foster care to make space in my life to be able to date. Because also, what I don't think foster care prepares you for is the amount of meetings and appointments and how it feels like a full-time job.
It
And
is.
that's what I try to
Yes.
tell people
And
is like,
especially if you do it the right way.
yes,
Kate, seem very much like way Reese and I were. Like we wanted to go to the doctor appointments. We wanted to be in the courtroom. We
oh,
wanted to,
totally.
I remember when the social worker came to take one of our kids, and he has fetal alcohol syndrome, and said something like to the point where, oh, I'm taking Makai to the doctor. I was like, why would you take him to the doctor? I was like, you've seen him once a month.
Yeah.
Doctors don't want to. So yeah, but they don't prepare you for that whatsoever.
Mm-mm. They really don't. And that's one thing I try to tell people, to not scare them away, but just know like for a season, you are taking on at least a 20-hour a week job, like that you don't get paid for,
Yeah.
you'll get canceled on a lot. Anyway, but I just knew I wanted to make space to be able to date because Gigi was she had just turned 2. She was starting to sleep through that, like we're getting out of that like toddler phase. And so closed my home in September, turned 40 in December. And then in February, I meet this guy on a dating app. And within our first few exchanges, we realized like we were going to the same church in the same service, sitting like 20 rows apart from each other on the same side. And we'd been doing that for like over a year. And we
Wow.
had so many things in common. And like we set up a FaceTime for like the next night after we met. And I was like, he wanted to FaceTime at 9 p.m. And I was like, I'm an early riser. I love getting up early. I was like, I will give this guy 30 minutes. Like 9 o'clock is very late for me. Like I'm a grandma. I go to
You're
bed
like
early
me.
because I love getting up. I'm a morning person. So I'm up at like 4:30 in the morning. It's my favorite time. And we ended up FaceTiming for like 3 hours. All of a sudden it was like midnight. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, wow. And so anyway, all that fast forward, like we're now engaged, but it was just really cool because I was like, oh man, I really am a firm believer that if you want something, sometimes you have to take something else out of your life or make space in a way so that it can enter your life. And yeah, but the
But then the
twist of the
story
story,
changed again.
yes, the twist of the story is that 6 weeks into dating, I was in a nail salon with 3 of my girlfriends celebrating a friend's birthday. We were getting our nails done. And this was at like 12:30 in the afternoon. At 4 o'clock, Chris, my fiance, was picking me up because I was going to meet his parents for the first time. We were having dinner with his parents. And so at 12:30, I'm sitting in the nail salon and I look down, my phone's ringing. I look down at my Apple Watch and it's my daughter's caseworker. And I was like, why are you calling me? Like, I have not heard from you since the adoption, basically.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
I don't
because
know.
once you adopt, you don't ever hear from anybody. It's like,
It's like done.
yeah.
And so I answered the phone and immediately just like my heart started to race because my daughter has 3 other older biological siblings. And so my first thought was like, is something wrong with the adoption? Did we not do something right? Like
Right.
that was my first thought. And then my second thought was like, maybe the older siblings are in trouble. Like maybe one of her older siblings needs help. So I answered the phone and she was like, hey, you're probably wondering why I'm calling. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, well, we just found out that Gigi's birth mom just delivered a baby boy yesterday. And same circumstances, he's in need of foster care. And I just like in the middle of the nail salon, I just like start sobbing and shaking. And the poor nail woman was just like, what is happening? Like, what phone call did you just take? And my friend like next to me, she like grabbed my hand and she was like, it's okay. She couldn't even hear, but she was like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, I mean, I don't often react like that, but it was just like way too much emotion. And I didn't know, but the DCS attorney was also on speakerphone and she was like, hey, it's Sarah. I'm here. Like, I know this is a lot for you to hear. And I was just like, how did nobody know? Like normally when a birth parent is pregnant again, especially that this was going to be baby number 5, they normally have like they track those things. And
You would think,
you
but
think,
they don't.
yeah. Yeah. And so, and they were just like, would you be open to taking him? And I'm sobbing and I'm like, yes, yes, of course. And they were like, you don't need to answer right now. And I was like, okay, thanks. Like, and so I got a little bit of information, like what hospital he was at and that he was in the NICU. He had a medical condition that was, I mean, aside from the bad choices the birth mom was making while she was pregnant, he had some other complications that he was in the NICU for. And so I was just like, are you calling me because I need to go pick him up like right now? Like, is this happening is he being discharged today? Because he was born on the 21st and I got the call on the 23rd, 24th, somewhere in the 23rd. And so anyway, they were like, no, he's not being discharged until tomorrow, until Friday. So we'll keep you in the loop. And then, I mean, I was really in a state of shock. Like I just
Of
could
course.
not even
By the way,
wrap my
did you go meet your new husband's parents?
I did. Because here's why. One, I had been so excited about it. 2, I knew, okay, tomorrow if I go meet this baby and potentially pick this baby up, my whole world is going to change. This felt like keeping the last kind of thing as normal of like, hey, we're going to do this date night. This Thursday night was our date night. And I'm like, we're going to do our normal date night. And then everything's going to change. And so my friends kind of thought I was crazy. They're like, why would you even go? And I was just like, I know what this is going to do to my life of like, this is going to completely change my life. And so, but what was funny is that we were going to have a drink before meeting his parents. And I was so grateful for that because I was like, okay, I'm going to have to tell him. But
Right.
he picked me up and I was like, I cannot start this conversation in the car. So I was like peppering him with questions to keep him talking the whole drive to the bar. And we were almost there. And he was like, so how was your day? And I was like, oh, interesting. Let's take a seat. Let's grab it. Let's sit down before. And so we sat down and we were at like our favorite little like bar in downtown Franklin. And I was just like, well, I got a really interesting call today. And, and poor guy, I'm like, how do you tell your new boyfriend of 6 weeks that you're probably going to have a baby tomorrow? Like it just, yeah, it was.
Did you tell his parents?
We didn't. He was like, I was like, I don't think we should tell him because I don't know how I feel yet. I was like,
Right,
that feels like
right.
a lot of information. And he was like, babe, it's your story to tell. If you want to tell him, you can. Which is funny now, like we talk, his parents are so lovely and wonderful. And actually his dad is adopted. And so there's been this
It's like
like
full
cool,
circle.
yeah. And so, I mean, the first time that they met baby Ryland, like, I mean, they both just like sobbed, like holding him. Anyway, they're wonderful. And they see now, they're like, we're glad you didn't tell us. Like, that seemed like a good choice. That would have been, it would have just changed the dynamic
Right.
of,
Right.
I feel like we would have done a lot of processing there together that maybe I needed to do on my own. So
So then, and so now you are the mom of two, you
yeah.
know, and so, as we're winding down, and by the way, I could talk to you all day. I mean, I feel like you and I are friends forever.
I know, totally.
Did your new husband, is he adopting the kids as well?
Yes. Yes. Actually, by the time this comes out, he might have already done that. Yeah. So he has 3 kids that he has 50-50 custody from his first marriage. And that's been such a sweet thing to see my kids and his kids just like bond, and his kids kind of got to walk the foster care journey too. His 2 oldest are 8 and 9. And so they really understood, at one point they were like, wait, he could go back? Like, what do you mean? Like, he could go back? Like, and I was like, yeah. Anyway, so they kind of got to walk that. So it was a really big celebration once the adoption was finalized. It was like,
Which, by the
wait,
way, the
it's
picture was, I mean, my heart just absolutely, I love that we're friends on social media. So I got to see it. I was just like, and there's, my husband and I, we just adopted our 5th child.
yeah,
And so, and we adopted an 18-year-old, because our
yeah,
kids were now older, they were teenagers.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
very much like you, I thought we were done, but,
yeah,
and I still don't know if I'm completely done, but,
yeah.
listen, you are amazing, and you truly are. I say this to people all the time. There are good humans in the world for a reason, and you truly are a good human. I
Oh,
mean, you and I both know it's not an easy task when you raise children who have come from the foster care system, no matter what age you get them, by
yeah,
the way. And, and I do know what it feels like to have a judge sign a piece of paper and then all of a sudden it's crickets. No one checks in on you. No one, but listen, I'm here for you and I want more updates and I cannot wait. Congratulations on the adoptions.
thank
Congratulations.
you.
Wedding,
Thank
I
you.
mean, and now all of a sudden you're a mom of 5. It's
I know. I said to somebody the other day, I'm like, I just want to remind you that in October of 2020, I was very single and very childless. And now here we are, like 3.5 years later. I just want to say though, too, like learning about the foster care system and watching kids go through the foster care system, I really want to say, and for you who experienced that firsthand and aged out, I say this all the time to anyone that will listen. I'm like, any person who makes it through the foster care system that turns out to be a functioning adult, to me, deserves all the medals and all the accolades and all the like applause, because I had 2 very loving, committed parents, and life is still hard to be a human. Being a human is hard no matter what. But going through what these kids go through, what you went through, I just have so much respect. And I wish that the world would see that too, because it is it's like, I don't think people have any idea
They
what
do.
that
They don't.
feels
You
like.
know, as a public speaker, I go around the country talking to educate people about kids in foster care, and it saddens my heart when people don't realize the statistics.
Yeah,
Knowing the fact that kids enter the system because of a choice someone else made, knowing that we're filling our penitentiaries with children from foster care, knowing that, when they're cute babies, everybody wants to save them, but when they become teenagers, we want to throw them to the wayside.
totally.
We know for a fact that kids are sleeping in offices, and nobody's talking about it. And I
I
think
know.
that to me, I mean, one child, Kate, every 2 minutes enters foster care in the United States. And
Yeah,
that's 700 kids a day.
yeah.
And nobody's talking about it. I was just watching the news over the weekend and they were talking about, all of these kids who are human trafficked, but not one time did they say, oh, by the way, we know for a fact that 76% of all children who are
Mhm.
human trafficked are in foster care.
Yeah, it's
Never did they
insane.
make that statement because people just, I mean, they don't want to normalize it. And I
Yeah,
love the fact that you use your platform to continue to talk about it. Even though, you've got a house full now. I love the fact that, not only have you educated yourself about it, but you're continuing to talk about it because I truly do believe, the more we talk about it, the more change we will see because there
yeah,
has to be a change because the system's shattered. It's absolutely
totally.
shattered.
And I mean, they said this during our training a lot, that like literally takes one caring adult to change a kid's life, like one caring adult. And I think about how many caring adults I had growing up from my parents' friends or teachers or something like that. And when it, like, the statistics are, no, if a kid has one caring adult, and I think about all the people running around the world that have free time and they have a little bit, and that little bit could like literally change a kid's trajectory for the rest of their lives. Like,
Yeah. No, I
yeah,
agree. I agree with you 100% on that. And it's just sad because I look at my son when he came to me at the age of 18. He thought that his life was over, basically.
yeah,
And kids in foster care are given three choices. Number one, they give up. Suicide rate is so high. Number two, they
mm-hmm,
give in, they end up in penitentiary. I'm the youngest of 10 kids, and my brothers and sisters didn't make it, you
yeah,
know. Or we give it all we got. Listen, Kate, it has been an absolute pleasure. Guys, I have to tell you, I say this all the time. I think it's my last season, but then I get an amazing human, and I cannot wait for my next episode. Listen,
oh,
everybody, not every one of us can foster. And not every one of us can adopt. But the one thing that each and every one of us can do is we can mentor. We can actually be that one caring adult who goes and visits that child, the regular that they need within their lives. And I think that that's something that we miss. Kate, congratulations. I can't wait to
thank
see
you.
pictures. You and I definitely will be talking again because I definitely want
Totally.
to update. And for everybody, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can always email us at info@comfortcases.org. And until we meet again, continue to be good humans. Take care. Hey everybody, it's Rapier, the founder of Comfort Cases, and thanks for tuning in to Fostering Change. You can actually watch a couple of episodes right here